Welcome to fifth edition of Ananke Festival of Literature. I'm Anjali Chauhan, an independent writer and journalist based in New Delhi. I'm currently pursuing my PhD in political science from Department of Political Science, University of Delhi, India. And it's my utmost honor and privilege to be given this opportunity to moderate this very important panel. The title of the panel, What Writing Can Do, is more of a provocation. As writers, many of us hold close the belief that writing can do much, much broader than what's merely written, that it carries potential to move people, to shift narratives, perhaps even change the world in rippling, transformative ways. But we are here to ask the question, has that really been true? And if it was, does it still hold true in the times we are living through now? Because we are now living and writing into noise more than ever. A constant blaring noise created by power and its many manifestations. Social media that flattens nuance, algorithms that decide what is to be seen, what is to be blurred, AI that generates language without experience, without memory, and hovering over all of it, an atmosphere thick with disinformation, moral panic, and curated truth. In such a world, the question what writing can do becomes both necessary and uneasy. This conversation brings together writers who have carved spaces across forms, and through them, they raise questions about identity, existence, visibility, and voice. Together, we are going to explore not just the power of writing, but also its limitations, its tension, and its newer responsibilities in the age where reality is set up for debate itself. I would like to begin with introducing our panelists, Jyotsna Mohan, who is an award-winning writer and journalist with nearly 3 decades of experience across TV, print, and digital media. Jyotsna has always sought to hold up mirror to the society. A former senior editor at NDTV, her journey led her to pen her debut book, Stoned, Shamed, Depressed, an Amazon bestseller that dives deep into the secret lives of India's teens in social media era and reveals challenges that resonate with young people globally. So Jyotsna has been ahead of time of adolescence, we'll see. Her latest book, Pratap, a defiant newspaper, also an Amazon bestseller, which she co-authored with her veteran journalist father, is based on the family newspaper, a much respected name before and after India's partition. It was released recently by HarperCollins India. A columnist for publications in India and abroad, including a weekly column on Point for Gulf News. Her writing reflects societal issues, challenges the status quo, which she says is her family legacy. She brings the outlook to her new online talk show, Table Talk with Jo. Jyotsna is the recipient of the Sanatan Pushkar 2025 for literature. We welcome you, Jyotsna, and
Thank
I
you.
would like we are so glad to have you here. And without much further ado, I would like to begin with the first question itself. What do you believe writing can do? Is it a form of intervention, testimony, healing, or something entirely different? Jyotsna, you have documented youngsters in the age of hypersurveillance and shame. Do you feel writing still holds ability to unsettle power or even change mind?
Of course I do. But before I go ahead, I just want to thank Ananke for this opportunity to speak about, especially also my first book, because that's also been very close to my heart. And I felt it was a book that, came out a little bit ahead of its time, which is why that book was not an intervention. It was just a plain mirror to society. Having said that, the reactions vary, and sometimes when we're not ready, when a society is not ready to hear, then the society is going to stonewall, it's going to push back. You think that book, wouldn't get trolled? I mean, there's nothing troll worthy in it, but I would wake up with abuses every morning, listening to people from all across India and abroad, Indians settled abroad, who said this doesn't happen in our families, and this must be just about you and your family. And having said that, the problem when societies remain in denial, when also there's a patriarchal strain, it all comes together. so pushing against that mindset needs a narrative that consistently hammers and chips at that thought process. And I'm very glad that conversations around this have now, kind of evolved a little bit. There is just a little bit more of this conversation in the mainstream media, even if you take something like mental health amongst the younger generation. By and large, in the past, we've always dismissed it. Ki, I'll say that in Hindi, bachon ko kya problem hai? They should just go out and play and they'll be fine. Just let them be out. But that's not looking at the problem, is it? Unless you accept that there's a problem, you're never going to find a solution. And so I think that is why it's very important for writers to not just bring out the problem, not just hold a mirror, but to show the way that yes, first let's accept there's a problem. We're showing you that problem, and then get minds rolling, because the more you keep chipping, I feel the more you're going to make headway, and the more people keep hearing that same narrative again and again, then it's also counterproductive, isn't it? Because that same narrative in an echo chamber will push back against another reality. So I think for writers, it's an interesting time to be. It's also a hard time to be.
More hard than interesting, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you take it as a challenge, isn't it?
true, true, true. And following up on this conversation, as a journalist navigating post-truth realities, how do you balance storytelling with facts, ethics, and visibility, especially when nuance is often getting lost in the outrage culture, as we were talking about?
That's the problem, isn't it? The nuance of things. That is you're constantly missing out on the real story. I mean, the recent news that broke last night with the terror attack in Kashmir. Uh, Again, I'm hoping that we don't miss out on the real story, the real problem, isn't it? Uh, it's not about a communal bias. It's, and that's what I see a lot of people flagging. No, it's about every citizen on this planet having the right to live. And innocent lives being taken away in terror attacks is a no-no. I think that is the bottom line. But yet that is going to, I fear, again, be missed by some elements, and that is a grave reality of the global era today. I think across the world we are kind of struggling to say that let's not lose sight of where we are. And for writers, I think that is the most important thing, to keep speaking what I think, not just speaking and not just bringing out the truth, but to bring out the elements of that truth, isn't it? To make it approachable to people, to make it understandable to people, that it's not just mindsets. I think the biggest challenge for us at the moment is to draw people out of those echo chambers, to draw them out of those set boxes that they've kind of put themselves in, and to show them that, that mindset has got stuck. So unfortunately, as I say, it's the march of the global right. And in that, the mindsets have kind of gone, whether it is Trump or, whether it is Hungary or take it, even in India. So I think the problem remains for writers is to push against that. It's push against the tide at the moment, actually, and to understand that there's going to be pushback. So you've got to be, I think there's a similarity here with journalism as well, that unless you understand that you're in it for the long haul, you're in it for being bombarded from many, many angles, I think don't dabble with it, at least in nonfiction at the moment.
It's very entertaining. Next, I wanted you to comment a bit on what advice you would want to give to young writers who are writing in this turmoil.
It's the same advice that I gave a bunch of journalism students the other day at a talk in their university. And I'd say the same. You see, even fiction at some level is just it's just
Yeah.
a story, right, that has been created. There is fiction in non-fiction. There always is. There's always a story that we are aware of, that we put together, and we beautify it, or you look at it, we just change it around, but there's a lot of fiction around it, of reality around it. So I would actually tell the students the same thing that I say to journalism students, that unless you're prepared to, it's not an easy ride. It's not going to be your way only. There's going to be a lot of stonewalling from many different angles today. Across the board, whether it is the establishment, or there is just some group that has found a line that they don't agree with. So, they're going to want to ban the book. They're going to want, it's the same thing, right? Your story in journalism at times, you go out and you have worked 3 days on the field, and yet there's a call that the editor gets and that story is withheld. So you have to be prepared to understand that you're here for the long haul. One disappointment is not going to be it. So you've got to be really, really very hard on yourself to be in these professions today.
That's a very estimate advice. Javeria has joined us. Welcome. I would love to quickly introduce Javeria to our audience. Javeria is a Brooklyn-based Pakistani poet, translator, and educator. Her poems and proses have appeared widely, and more recently in Poet Laureate, the Brazenhead Review, and Foglifter. She is currently a Fulbright scholar and an MFA Poetry candidate at the New School, and was selected as a 2023-24 Educational Associate at Teachers and Writers Collective. Her interest lies at the intersection of education and literary arts. She has previously worked with Cave Canem Foundation, the Adroit Journal, and Habib University in both administrative and editorial capacities, and currently serves as a manuscript reader for Tupelo Press. Welcome, Javeria.
Thank you.
We were just in the middle of the conversation, and I would like to now begin with asking you a couple of questions, and then Jyotsna might pitch in. So, I started discussing with seeing how writing in the present times of turmoils and also resistance mean to us, to the writers as well as to the audience. So, as a poet and translator straddling through geographies and languages, do you feel poetry still holds, the power to disrupt the broader narratives in the age of brevity, distraction, especially through AI and social media?
Thank you so much, Anjali, for that introduction. Though I want to add a little caveat that it's been updated and I have graduated from the new school. And I'm currently an assistant professor at Habib back in Karachi. I think especially now, poetry has the power to disrupt, especially in this age of brevity and in this age of distraction. Although there's this one professor of mine, Nate Marshall, who quoted his professor once and said, writing is a function of distraction. And so I'm both thinking of writing as a distraction and as a disruption to towards distraction, or distraction in a way that mobilizes people. In these very recently I read this one poem by Amiri Baraka, who's a Black American African poet, Arab poet also. His poetry, this poem is called Black Art, and it starts with this line: poems are bullshit unless they are teeth or trees, and then he goes on this lovely little kind of like an associative leaps that he takes throughout his poems. And he says, let's not write love poems until love can exist freely and equally, and then Black people can love. And so I feel like that's the kind of poetics that I'm aspiring towards, especially these days, that poetics of teeth. Because thinking of, I'm always also contending with the idea that, what can writing really do these days? How can it function in a way that is mobilizing, that is accelerating, that is disrupting. And so I think truly there's a lot of potential for poems to be lukewarm in this time, even though it talks about certain ideas or concepts that are disruptive, but can limit like the potential of the poem. So I'm thinking about what are the forms that we can use, what are the techniques one can use, that goes beyond that little lukewarmness, that like has grit and has teeth.
I'd like to share a little anecdote. So recently I started teaching at one of Delhi University's colleges, and I gave this assignment on reimagining democratic society. And I asked the students to do it as in any way possible, poems, short stories, or in any narrative form. And one of my students wrote this beautiful poem. And I called her after the class to have a chat, and she told me that she has generated it through Meta AI. And at that point, I was not even aware of what Meta AI is. It's a tool on WhatsApp. I came home and checked it later. So what she has done is to give a few prompts to the AI, and then it generated the whole poem, which was very new and also sort of unsettling for me because it looked like as if a human has written. So if AI is increasingly becoming capable of at least mimicking human experiences, it's going to get difficult for writers, is what I believe. And on that, I would like to ask you a second question: that how do you approach writing and even teaching literature at the moment when AI is mimicking creativity and institutions are collapsing under ideological pressures?
A really good and a really difficult question. This is a question that comes up a lot during like our like meetings, faculty meetings as well. AI is a big tool that, and it's getting increasingly more efficient and human-like. So there's also like what students also do is try to make it like, give it a prompt and say, try to make it like human, try to write it like
Human,
human.
yeah.
Add some mistakes in there, add some typos or spelling so it looks really natural. And I mean, given that this like the kind of creativity that the students are using to are coming up with to give to, that's also commendable on its own. But now I'm thinking about, there's been a lot of challenges throughout, right? Throughout human history when one deals with like writing or creative, there's maybe some kind of limiting expression through the state or through other means, and in this like this techno state or surveillance that we live under. And I think given to the credit of the resilience of writers as well, thinkers, creatives, that they're able to like that this is like a momentary thing. That's what I find when I like read history as well, that this like momentary thing that kind of intervenes against creativity. And then it does happen that when kind of like things balance out, then that AI, like I do truly believe that AI will never be able to really talk about the human condition just because it is not human. Yes, it can like take from these like different whatever is data is available on the internet and mimic it and try to like create something original out of it. But I think it will never have that effect or that kind of authenticity as a creative work. And I'm thinking of, when I think of like AI, I'm also thinking of, like poets who are working with technology. So one poet comes to mind, Lillian Yvonne Bertram, who is really an incredible poet. She's a Black poet in the US, writing in contemporary English language. And she really uses this kind of like technical AI tools to talk about poetics. So, for example, one of her very recent collections that she's coming out with talks about like how AI is like a racist tool, and kind of really like propagates all this racist notions and ideas. and she's looking at how it like views Black people. It's a very, very interesting like work that she's doing. So I also believe there is some value in like engaging with these tools in a way um to talk about their biases and their uh, the kind of like the backend data that is there, and to really talk about like the how the colonial state is using these tools.
The next question is to both of you. With AI generated content, platforms curating specifically for, for trending purposes, for holding the gaze of the audience, hashtag turning grief into, something which is consumable. How do we hold on to the slow and deliberate human storytelling in such times? Jyotsna, would you like to go first?
Again, a lot of parallels with journalism here as well, right?
Yeah,
because journalism is also under, in a sense, I see attack from reels and that 30-second consumed.
Yes.
So it's the same. And I also I feel like long format, like for journalism, I'd say, okay, print is still holding on, because if you need to read long format, you need to go to print by and large, right? I mean, it's not the same as reading it online. But I think you have to, like, Javeria said, you have to take along the new stuff. You can't be isolated in today's environment. Writing has always been to make people uncomfortable, make people question, make people think. That hasn't changed. But the tools have changed. With that, the thinking has changed. That quick consumption of things has changed. How you even read the news, or how you read a book. So I think it's really tricky today, but I think we have to just go. Everything has to go in the mix. You can't, I mean, I'd love to say that, oh gosh, and I don't. I mean, I'm always arguing this in my home about, chat GPT, and it's a matter of principle. I'm not going to look at it. But the reality is that, the world is looking at it. And I can still hope that, okay, great, that my writing will be different, but a DeepSeek may take out something even better than what I have imagined and sat over for 1 year in a matter of minutes. So the challenges are, I think, multifold, but I think we have to just go along with everything and just see where this takes us at the moment, frankly.
Javeria, would you like to comment?
I absolutely agree with Jyotsna. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Okay. No, I was thinking of, when you asked that question, I'm thinking of in this idea of everybody is using it. I've been thinking of an article that I was reading a few days ago, in which it talks about how the left has no religion. And it talks about when, this kind of secularization is coming along, the religion is like left as something like, oh, whoever can stake a claim to it, and like the left is more so like leaning away from religion, and so the right uses it as a tool to, like, have these congregations, all of these things happening in churches and mosques, where it kind of radicalizing people, right, towards their ideas. And so I'm thinking of these new, like, because AI is now, I feel like, here now, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. And so I feel like it's one of those tools where it's one of those things where one faction of people can quickly stake a claim to it, if one faction solely, like, absolutely, like, leaves it. And so there's this bit of like fear that I have in thinking about that. What if one faction, like, stakes a sole claim to this tool that we have? And so what happens to the other? And so I'm thinking, and that's why I do appreciate these poets who are like really incredible poets and writers and thinkers who are talking about these things in ways that I like want to or pine towards, in a way that I feel is ethical and, like, morally clear and write. And so I do need these like kind of people that I look up to and I aspire towards to be thinking about these things and to be writing about these things in tandem.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. Next, I would like to ask again to both of you, what do you think about when writing risk becoming extractive, especially when, as writers, we are engaging with uh, people from the marginalized background or with themes like pain and grief and loss. So, how do you take care of the ethics and consent and care while writing?
Right, I'll go again, I guess. And also identity, isn't it, today?
Yeah, and say true.
Along with that, I mean, that's what the young ones continuously ask you, that, you know, if I'm out in the field and I'm writing a story, how do I look upon identity? How do I look upon who I am and then give you what you want? You know, it's... and I say that, you know, especially identity, I mean, it's a question that never came in my mind when I was reporting or writing. So it's a sign of the times, isn't it? That the young generation is coming up with these questions I would never think about. Consent again is you know, it's hard and fast today, and as it should have been actually in our times. You know, we kind of grew up in generations where a lot of things were given, understood, not given. It was all very fluid, never black and white, and you know, the boundaries could be stretched, but there's a good and bad, I feel, in it, in some of the questions that are being asked today, because I I get the grief, but you know, as a reporter for years and years in the field, I mean, we would be woken up and say, okay, now there's been a train blast, you've got to go. So, you know, I've spent the height of winter in a field with literally nothing, sleeping in the car, waking up and doing body counts, because that's my job. And you have to segregate yourself. This constant ability of social media to take out a little bit unnecessary emotions at time, because if it's a job, you can't be on both sides. Unfortunately, that is the truth. I mean, I can sit today, in my opinion, pieces, and talk about grief. I can talk about a terror attack, and I can speak about the grief. But as a reporter, as a writer who has to file that story, I have to show you what really is happening on the ground. I have to show you their grief, not my own. So I think that line stays today. It has to.
It's very thought-provoking. Javeria, would you like to add on something?
I'm just thinking about that, Jyotsna. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. I think in my writing, it's more so, you know, I'm writing poetry, and so I want to say or right now at least, it's more towards like looking at the self and going interior. And I am talking about my own grief or my own pain and my own sadness. And then, of course, you know, like through that, trying to talk about universal grief and universal pain and universal sadness. There's a current manuscript that I'm working on, which is about, you know, like my kind of family's history and then the histories of the cities that I've lived in. And so, you know, most of it takes place in Karachi. And I'm a Muhajir, which is an immigrant, right? These are the people who moved from India to Pakistan during partition. And so they are also a little bit, you know, like responsible for having these indigenous people living in Karachi at that time to be displaced. So there's, you know, at the same time, when I'm also seeing whatever is unfolding in Gaza, I'm also, you know, like thinking about this dichotomy of settler and immigrant and indigenous, where you are like, you know, growing up, you're thinking that you are the one that's like oppressed, you know? And so growing up to know that, no, you are also like, yeah, like, or whatever is responsible for, you know, the displacement of these people. And it continues to this day. And it's like very, very actively continuing right now as I speak in Karachi. And so I'm thinking about, like all of these questions are now foreground in my own thinking as well. Like, who am I speaking for? Who am I speaking against? Who am I representing? I'm always like really wary of representing anything at all. I don't believe in representative writers or representative authors. That's just not the way that I think writing works. And so I'm like, but I'm really, really keen on like, like learning about that, learning about how I'm presenting or like saying a thing in a way that is very, very true and authentic to how I feel, and is also like just to who I'm speaking about and who I'm speaking to.
If I can, just add to that, that's
Sure.
that's the beauty of poetry, isn't it?
Hmm.
Poetry has to have the angst and the beauty and the grief and the loss, and so it depends on what genre you're writing as well at times, isn't it?
Yes.
On
Yes.
how grief can be different in different genres. Loss
Mhm.
can be
That's
different in loss can be portrayed differently in a piece of fiction as opposed to a piece of non-fiction, as simple as that. Poetry
Correct.
would take it to a much higher level.
Correct.
correct. Absolutely agreed, Jyotsna. Absolutely agreed. Um, I think we have time for one last question, so I'll be very quick. One piece of writing, your own or anyone else, that reminds you of the power that writing can hold, and what you as a writer is trying to unlearn in the current times.
Javeria, you want to go first?
Yeah, certainly.
You asked that question, and it's a very, very short poem by Jean Valentine that comes to mind. Do you want me to read it? I would love to read it.
Yeah,
It's
sure. If it's just a couple of lines, I guess we'll be
yeah,
fine.
it's a really short poem. It's called Door in the Mountain. It's by Jean Valentine. Never ran this hard through the valley, never ate so many stars. I was carrying a dead deer tied onto my neck and shoulders, deer legs hanging in front of me, heavy on my chest. People are not wanting to let me in. Door in the mountain, let me in. And I think of writing as that door in the mountain that you're calling to, this mystical, absolutely mystical, spiritual, but also like secular as a contrast to the spiritual endeavor, both political and both personal, political grief, personal grief. That's like the kind of the door in the mountain that I'm calling to. And inshallah, if it's like of any good, then it will be an endeavor that is just like that just continues to call and not like not to see God, right? Like, but always finding to see God, but not seeing God. So I think of it as that. Yeah, I think that's
It's
the best I can.
beautiful. It's beautiful. And what is that something you are trying to unlearn as a writer?
Yes, unlearn. I would have to think about that. So I'll let Jyotsna go first.
Yes, sure.
You know,
Don't sound
that,
to you.
that door in the mountain that's calling is also our calling, isn't it? In a sense. Uh, it calls us through, I think, through the good, the bad, the heavy, the light, and the truth of it all. The truth that we see it may not be your truth, but it is my truth. And if I can, and I think I've tried to justify that in my writings as if that is my truth, I can't go really that wrong. I can expect people to question it, and they should. I mean, that's what writing is about, right? It has to make somebody question what the other person has written. It has to make somebody contented, somebody argue with it, somebody's fine with it. And I think there's not a particular, I mean, there's lots of particular pieces and quotes and, all that I like. But I'd like to just say that because I have a journalist background, my training both at home, as I said, being a fourth generation journalist and having worked in this line for so long is slightly different. It's in a sense, it's unfortunately or fortunately, it's also one dimensional, that I have to tell you what's going on. I have to tell you the truth, and it doesn't mean that it's all about that neutrality factor. I have to also tell you what's going on with the marginalized. I have to also tell you that if there are two sides of the story and one is way lower, I have to pull that one up, right? And if you're getting stonewalled along the way, I mean, I've seen how, my grandfather, he stopped writing for 18 months when there was the emergency in India and the press was censored. He put his pen up and he said, I've never been censored by the British. Why would I be censored in independent India? And so that is writing for me, right? The censorship of it, because if you want me to say what you want me to say, I'm not writing it. And that's also the learning and unlearning along the way, isn't it? I may look at it differently when I was younger, because you just want a byline, you just want your word out. But 30 years down the line, no. If you're compromising me editorially, please take me out. And I have taken myself out. I have written letters to people where I was writing for 20 years saying that, I have loved our association, but this is not the journey I will be part of anymore. So please, from now onwards, I mean, I'd rather not write than to write something where I'm not going to be able to sleep over it. So why write it? I mean, and it's a struggle today, because in this environment, you've got to either strike this side or that side. And very few people would want, and whatever gives you the likes and the numbers and the followers and all of that. But in that, if you were still going to want to say that I'm going to stand whichever way it comes, right? What matters? There's a cost to pay for that as well. So always stand up, be counted, and learn and unlearn along the way.
That's very empowering to hear. Even I have this incident during COVID. There was this very big name magazine which asked me to do a story on ASHA workers during COVID. So I wrote a story for them, and instead of it being a sob story, I posted as empowering story of women workers. Of that, they are not the only one who are the worst sufferers. They are the one who are resisting the suffering the most. And um, after the editorial edits, the empowering part of it was completely gone, and I had to take my story back. And I'm not going to, work it out your way. So it's a very challenging time we are living in, when grief, loss, and everything is getting commodified, and um, it's telling people's feelings are being up for soul. So thank you so much for your answer, and I'll quickly go back to Javeria if she wants to add on something.
I am also so moved, Jyotsna, that sometimes the most writerly thing one can do is not write at all. It's really
Yes.
moving and it's really empowering. Unlearning. So one thing that I'm kind of unlearning, and it happened because I recently taught a very, very beginner poetry workshop, and all of these people signed up who did not consider themselves poets, right? So one thing that I'm unlearning is what a good poem is. When you're like in academia for so long, you are kind of like prescribed this method of, this is the kind of a good poem, this is a good poem, and these have these tools and these techniques. But sometimes the poem has literally no rules and no techniques and no tools, but it's such a good fucking poem, right? And you can't really say why. And so that's the kind of thing I'm unlearning, what I think a good poem is.
That's beautiful.
You know,
Thank you, both
I
the
want,
speakers.
I want to say one more thing, and it's not just
Yes.
unlearning. I think another way of unlearning is to always step back. Sometimes, if, like you're saying, you're in academia, and if you're just in it, and the other thing kind of doesn't take, you don't have the time sometimes, or you're always in that system that you just follow the path because sometimes you don't have the bandwidth to go outside of that box. But the moment you step outside and you take a pause, the language has changed. The way of
Absolutely.
writing has changed. So much changes, right? And you look at it you can come back into that system. But I'd say even for young writers, always, because for the young people, there are different considerations. So they're always going to be wanting to go into the rat race. But to step out of that rat race, sometimes take a foot out, take the other foot out, pause, go back in it. But you'll come back with a fresh perspective every single time. At least that's my learning.
Thank you so much for the advice, Jyotsna. I'm going to step back more often.
Brilliant advice. Brilliant advice to all, especially the young writers. Thank you, both the speakers, for your honesty, your insights, and for reminding us that writing is not just an expression, but an act of utmost responsibility. I hope our audience will enjoy listening to you as much as I did. Thank you so much for taking out time and being here. Thank you.